Introduce our final speaker of the day. I'll just introduce David Marsh from the Ministry of Defence. Over to you, David.
Thank you very much, Ben, and good afternoon, everybody. So it's a great pleasure to be able to close out the APM Southwest Conference today, Project Professional Driving Sustainability, and we've certainly heard an awful lot of views that set the scene for the challenge that faces as a community of professionals and the types of ways in which we may rise to address those challenges. So I would like to talk a little bit about positive futures for the profession. I'll talk a little bit about the context of my own work in the Ministry of Defence and wider government, but I think the themes that we've heard today and the themes that I'd like to touch on are generic to us in whatever sector that we're applying our profession of project management in. So next slide, please, Rob. Who am I? I'm David Marsh. I work in the Ministry of Defence. I've done that now for nearly 30 years. I began my career as a scientist, and I moved into project teams, project management, mostly around technical work. But as time went on, that experience broadened, and I found myself eventually leading project teams and then major project teams and organisations that deliver major projects across defence. At the moment, my appointment is as Director of Major Projects and Programmes in our infrastructure organisation in the MOD. And in that role, I oversee a portfolio of some 350 or so major projects in the infrastructure space. That's a spend of taxpayers' money of around about £2 billion a year. And those projects are delivered worldwide in support of our military capability in the UK. So across my career, I've been pleased to continue my professional development. Obviously, I started as a scientist, professionally qualified there, but I've also followed a professional route through project management and been pleased to have been associated with the APM in particular for the whole of my along the way, as those responsibilities have grown broader, then of course the challenge grows broader, and I've also been pleased to develop some professional competence in the world of finance, which is something I think we all end up needing to do, and also is really important to be up to date and competent in that as well. The other point about my role is that as head of profession for project and programme management, or project delivery in government terms, for the MOD, I've had the pleasure of working alongside other government departments as a community of professional leaders. And I've been doing that role in defence now for about 15 years. And in particular, I guess in the last 5 to 10 years, the increasingly strong leadership role that the Infrastructure and Projects Authority have brought to defence and to government as a whole has been really pleasing to see, very, very closely aligned to the ethos and the culture and the ambition of the APM to develop the profession as a whole. So next slide, please, Rob. So the government community of project professionals is one of the largest professions in and it is increasing to grow. Earlier on today, we heard Sue Kershaw, our president in the APM, talk about the real and live importance of project delivery to the government as we face this crisis of the COVID pandemic in particular, and government looks to really respond in a very agile and a very direct way to the challenge of finding a way through this crisis. And project delivery, as Sue reflected on earlier, has been seen to be an absolutely critical core part of the government's response to that crisis. And as a profession, that's really pleasing to see the importance of project delivery recognised like that. And for colleagues involved, it's also provided an incredibly challenging but exciting opportunity to deploy their skills in a very wide range of important roles that the government needs us to do at this moment. So as I said, as a profession, we are one of the larger professions in government. Government recently has focused a lot on the core role of a profession for its workforce. And at the moment, it has over 26 defined professions within the civil service. Project delivery is one of the largest. There are about 14,000 professionals tagged across the core civil service. And by that, I mean central departments. So some of the larger arm's length bodies, arm's length delivery agencies, things like Highways England or the Environment Agency, for example, wouldn't be included in those numbers. So that's just core departmental professionals. And hopefully some of you will be aware of the way that the government reports its major projects and programmes in a portfolio referred to as the government's major projects portfolio, GMPP. And the Ministry of Defence, of course, plays a large part in that portfolio, as do all departments. But for ourselves, I'll come on in a second to talk about how our part of that looks. But overall, there are about 125 major projects and programmes in that portfolio. And that would be everything from large infrastructure projects such as HS2 through to major change initiatives for departments and for the systems that we use as citizens. So, incredibly complex programs to deliver things like universal credit, of course, is a huge change program. Tax changes as a result of changing government policy, etc. All of these would be things that would appear in that portfolio. In total, the amount of tax money that is spent on that is huge. You can see there 448 billion in 2019-20. So approaching £500 billion of whole life costs associated with those major programs. And these things tend to be a pyramid in terms of the numbers of projects and programs. You can imagine a much larger number of smaller projects, although the main spend, of course, probably sits in that major portfolio. So next slide, please, Rob. So as I said, defence plays a very large part in that overall portfolio for the government. And our mission in defence is set out there to protect the people of the United Kingdom, to prevent conflict, and to be ready and prepared for the future. And so to do that, we, of course, do an awful lot of work supporting our military colleagues through the armed forces and the tasks that the government sets them to do. The Ministry of Defence spends something like about £38 billion a year in its operating costs. And a large chunk of that, probably about a third of that, is the cost of major projects and programmes in defence. If we looked at whole life, that would probably be something like £140 billion at the moment. I mentioned the GMPP, and you can see there that currently we represent about 35 of that 140 or so of those projects. Defence does have a second tier of major projects because of the sheer volume that we have. And so we're just negotiating now with the Infrastructure and Projects Authority. Those numbers may well shift in government reporting next year, and probably will be including about 50 of our major projects on the GMPP next year. That obviously will increase the overall portfolio, and probably will more realistically recognise that our contribution to that portfolio is about a third in terms of cost, about a third in terms of number of projects. I'm also delighted to personally have been involved about 9 years ago now in the setting up and launching of the government's major project Leadership Academy. And this was set out to be a course that senior project leaders from across government could attend, which would provide consistent training, a consistent method really, and a consistent framework across which we would hope to engender much more interaction much more collaboration and a kind of shared experience and a shared language across major project leaders within government. And that has certainly been the case. It's been a very successful program of work. We've had something like about 500 people go through that course, and it lasts for about 18 months or so as a course over those 9 years. And I'm delighted that, Defence has played a major part also in supporting that course, and we have seen about a quarter of those total numbers coming from military and civilian colleagues across Defence. I'm also equally delighted to see in just more recent years, about the last 4 or 5 years, the development of a shorter, sharper course, which we call Programme Leadership course, PRP, and that is aimed at a sort of feeder level into the senior leadership roles. And again, Defence is playing a very strong part in supporting that course and supporting the development of a cadre of colleagues across government with that shared experience in training and that shared language of the job that they do. So that just kind of sets out really the way that we play our part across government in Defence. Clearly, the enterprise of people that we engage in is much larger than just our civil service colleagues. It falls obviously into a broader enterprise of colleagues from the supply chain, from the private sector, and indeed from other sectors such as charity sectors as well. And I'm delighted that it's events like this APM conference where we can come together as people from different sectors with slightly different experience to share our best practice and share our lessons and share our learning. So next slide, please, Rob. Theme then. I've been delighted to be able to attend today, and I thought I'd just share a few reflections of what I've picked up from the day itself. Really grateful to all of the speakers today. I found it fascinating. It's not often these days that I get a chance to attend a conference for a whole day, so I've been delighted to be able to do that. And I think it's been really interesting to some degree of the sort of strength of common themes that we've seen come through the day. The words have been used many times, but I think I would characterize today, I've seen something about what is it that we're facing as a profession, particularly as we look forward into the next decade. And I see that as we're facing challenge. We're facing that challenge from a number of different areas. But we're also facing opportunity, and often those two things do go together, challenge and opportunity. We saw from Sue, first of all, that challenge about what does the new world look like for us, new technology, new culture, etc., setting the scene for the day. I was really interested to hear David and Eleni talk about the skills gap earlier on, talk about the fourth industrial revolution. And are we fit for that? And the poll of responses was quite interesting. Again, to see that about just under 40% of us, I think, said we felt we were. So clearly, there's a lot of us feel that we've got more development and more training to do to really stand up to that challenge of the Internet of Things and cloud technologies, etc. Obviously, the pandemic crisis has brought an awful lot of things into sharp focus for us all. In my own organisation, I've been delighted at the way that it has responded to the constraint of having to work remotely, project management remotely, and there's been an awful lot of positives and benefits that we've learned from that. But I think it's really important to pause and reflect back on some of the challenges and risks as well. And I was particularly taken with Claire's presentation on some of the more personal and human aspects of the challenges, and her challenge to us really about whether we were working in a sustainable way. So not just sustainable in terms of the outcomes of the projects and programs that we are delivering, but actually our whole way of working, our whole aspect of looking at ourselves as individuals in our jobs, in our life, and making sure that we were working in a sustainable way, and we weren't, heading for a burnout, that we could continue in that new way of working. So I thought that was really interesting. We went on, of course, to much more of a detailed session with Michal and Isabel in particular, talking about the real challenge of environmental sustainability for us as a planet, and the need for us as project delivery professionals to push and to make sure that the issues around sustainability are there in our projects, particularly our major projects, and almost everything we do. I think I wrote down at some point sustainable by default, which was a wonderful term today. It's not just about saying, oh, let's not forget sustainability. For us as project delivery professionals, we need to be working in a way in which everything we do in our business cases, in our project plans, in our delivery outcomes is sustainable by default. And those 17 sustainable delivery goals set by our governments are a really good framework for us to keep in mind as we do our daily work on our projects. I was very grateful also to Mr. A from GCHQ to give us a really interesting reflection on the history of that organisation. It is an organisation that I have worked with closely myself in the past on many occasions. But again, really interesting to see their own journey in project management and looking forward into the future, where these issues of high technology, highly digital, are real and live for everything that they do in their business, helping us to stay safe in the UK. And I love the simplify, engage, transform strapline for the work that they're doing at the moment to take the profession forward in their organisation. So challenges there, but also all of it came with opportunity to develop, opportunity to respond, and opportunity to seek benefit and to seek growth in what we do. And I think Isabel in particular pointed that out in terms of the economy, financial economy, as well as the circular economy in her session there, talking about huge opportunity for companies to engage with the challenge, and in engaging with the challenge for them to seek and find and deliver opportunity, and not only for themselves, but of course by the nature of it, opportunity for us as a country and us as a planet as a whole. So then I guess I reflect also on lots of interesting points about the how we can behave, how we can approach those challenges and those opportunities. And our last session with our colleagues from Arcadis was talking about some of the tool sets that we can develop to help us work better in the new way. And I think also there was a lot of talk throughout the day. Almost every speaker, I think, said something about collaboration and the need for better collaboration, and in many ways also the opportunity now for better collaboration, particularly making best use of modern tools and technologies. And I think it's been fascinating to see that the way that a crisis such as the pandemic, forcing everybody to work remotely, and obviously respecting that not everybody finds that easy to do, and not everybody is adapted to that well. But nonetheless, by a large measure, huge amounts of travel has been stopped. Huge amounts of environmental, therefore, impact is reduced. And I don't know about others. It'd be interesting in the questions to see. Personally, I've found that I've been able to react to a problem, set up a chat alongside whatever it is that I'm doing about that problem, and resolve it in a live and virtual meeting. Which probably, if I'd been in an office, would have resulted in us getting together physically into a meeting room, sitting down and probably having a much longer conversation about it to resolve it. So I've certainly seen myself some really interesting benefit out of being forced to work purely virtually, using the tools and technologies that are there to support us. So just some reflections. As I said, themes: challenge, opportunity, and in terms of ways of working, I think collaboration and sustainable by default are the key things that I've taken out of the day. So on that point of collaboration in particular, next slide please, Rob. Just wanted to reflect, as I said, a little bit about how I saw that firsthand in defence, particularly in the crisis. Really interestingly, defence, of course, had set up to support the nation through the deployment of our military colleagues, to provide support in logistics, to provide support in certainly in testing stations as well. You'd have seen on the news a lot of behind the scenes support in planning as well. But it was really interesting to see project professionals really stepping up, and interestingly again, being redeployed in their hundreds. I think I've said 200 there. In fact, it's probably much more than that now. Being redeployed in their hundreds overnight into different departments, into different roles. And really interestingly, that was all possible because people were effectively joining a new team through their laptop, through their IT, and working remotely. In doing that, they were able to literally switch from one appointment to the next appointment within the next working day. I guess I reflect that probably 12 months ago, that might have involved a conversation about moving. It might have involved a conversation about turning up to a new location, and transport and accommodation, a weekly pattern maybe of commuting, etc., etc. And so it's been really interesting to see how the forced lockdown has in many ways enabled a really much more agile response to a crisis like this. So next slide, please, Rob. We go on to the next slide, please, Rob. So reflecting on what next then for the profession, looking at the next decade, I think we've seen today and we've heard from colleagues, the world is now for sure, for all of us, much more information rich. We have information available. We have people available at the click of a button. Not that we didn't before, but I think the practice now is now familiar to everybody. It's becoming very quickly the new normal. Flexible remote working as part of that as well. I think the last point is important though. Empowerment needs to go with that. We need to continue to develop the project manager, the project leader in particular, and the attributes. We had some really interesting stuff about that around various speakers today, around attributes and competencies that are needed for the future. That empowerment needs to come with that freedom and that those modern attributes, particularly based around collaboration. So next slide, please, Rob. But nonetheless, all of that means that it's going to be continue to be really important for us to invest in our people. Something that in government we've been focused on for a very long time in partnership with the APM, as I said, in my own experience for well over 2 decades now. But it is very true to say, and I'm absolutely live by this, that our capacity to deliver projects and programs as a Department of State, the Ministry of Defence, or any of my colleagues in other departments, our capacity to do that is absolutely grounded in the capability of our people. And, that is something we need to continue to invest in. We are investing in, and we've continued to focus on the role of leadership, the role of project management and project empowerment, as I've said before, of the project leader as part of that going forward. Recognizing that the future, those skills are more collaborative, they are dispersed, they're digital, and they need to focus on behaviors, broader outcomes. Again, as we said, or we heard earlier on in the day, the outcomes need to be, I think Isabel used the term of a sort of triple bottom line, much broader, and our people need to be therefore thinking in 3 dimensions really when they're delivering their projects. And so all of that development is very exciting for us as a profession. It means that the role of project management, the role of project leadership, is really becoming cemented as being one of the absolutely critical, core, central roles, not only for us in the civil service, but I think for any organisation that is looking to affect change and deliver that change through its projects and programmes. So moving on, please, Rob. And as I said, all of that for this conference, of course, was about putting it in the context of the challenge of sustainability. That is got to be central for everything we do. Reflecting on it again, as Michal and Isabel said in their session, this decade is critical. Actions that governments will take, actions that major corporations will take, is absolutely critical to our future. Our role as project managers is not only to deliver the projects that we're commissioned to do, but I think also to challenge back to make sure that those projects are pointing in the right direction. They are delivering benefit against those really critical targets as we move forward. It's a very exciting world to be in. It's a very challenging world to be in. And it's also a world that is expanding. The number of projects, the importance of those projects, that's all growing as we look out over the next 10 years as project professionals. So I think, next slide, please, Rob. I think that's my last slide. I'd like to thank you for listening.